She told me that back in her day it had been news that they had burned a witch. And something crosses in front of the truck, clearly. And as I was turning around, I passed by the house and the tractor stopped completely. The lights went out, everything. I got goosebumps, even today. Just remembering it, just imagining it. The corner lit up completely, and that's where I saw him. It was something else. We thought we were going to kill him.
Today we're going to Santa Fe, right in the middle of the countryside, where we'll learn about some of the most intense experiences a group of people had in this place. In the early morning, working of course and surrounded by pure darkness. I'll leave the WhatsApp down here where you can send me your paranormal experience. It doesn't matter how many voice messages, it doesn't matter how long they are. You can include photos, videos, or any relevant material to ensure your story is comprehensive. Then I'll review everything, and if I have any questions, I'll be contacting you. Before we start, I want to let you know that it will be released on the channel next week. I don't have the exact date yet. A video with several little things that you all have been sending me lately. But I also added a video that was filmed right here, where I am right now. An intro that I was filming for a previous video, and where something happened that I really couldn't find any explanation for. In fact, I tried to figure it out one way, looked for an explanation another way, and honestly, I have no idea what happened. And of course, I'd like all of you to see it. So stay tuned, because next week I still don't know which day. I don't know if it's going to be a Wednesday, a Saturday, or a weekday. This compilation with several things will be coming out along with the video I told you about. So stay tuned, because I would like you to watch it and give me your explanation, because I really have no idea what happened. With that said, I welcome you and hope you enjoy today's episode. Welcome. In the field, you hear a lot of stories, legends, and strange situations that make you feel afraid and also very doubtful about all those things that happen without us even realizing it. Today I'm here not only to tell you what other people have experienced, but I also want to share some of the most intense experiences I've had in the middle of the countryside. At my job, and without a doubt, they marked a before and after in my life.
I've spent a large part of my life working in the countryside, in the area of chopping and planting. I worked for a long time in two companies that are practically the same. I'm not going to mention names. I worked as a cart driver, and during planting, I planted using a marker. Everything was always normal. We always worked well. What's the most unique thing about this chopping team? We used to work double shifts. The double shift is really tough because you start at 5 in the morning and finish at 2 or 3 the next day. Then they gave you 8 hours to rest, and you had to do the same route again, right?
One of those times, something really amazing happened to me. I was on top of a tractor with a cab pulling a cart. I want to be clear, both the vehicle and the cart are huge and logically heavy. We're talking about, loaded as it was, it weighs over 3 tons. So it's well known that if you run over an animal with it, there's no chance it will survive. And I ask you to remember this fact. This happened in Santa Fe near the town of Las Petacas, just to help you locate it on the map. That time, we were a group made up of the manager, a bagger, a machinist, and 5 tractor drivers. Look, I don't want to get too specific with some technical aspects of our work, so it doesn't get boring. But on one of the trips, while chopping corn, something amazing happened. It was the middle of the night. I was finishing a trip, and I took a kind of dirt road to the side of a shed where we had the bagging machine. As I turned onto this path, I encountered something I believe I'll never forget. I see a brown horse with some white spots galloping toward me. I saw it clearly. I saw it as a real animal, and it was coming straight toward my tractor. And what I did was this.
I slammed on the brakes, I stopped, and I stayed still. Because with those tractors, you have the exhaust pipe that goes up, and it was like the exhaust pipe passed by and it faded away. Right in front of my eyes, I swear on my son, right in front of my eyes, just behind the exhaust, which I could see from the tractor's windshield to the exhaust, it completely faded away.
I stood there, confused and unsure of what to do, unable to comprehend what had occurred. I drank some water and tried to convince myself that it was just lack of sleep, an illusion from being tired. It was something strange, but it helped me calm down. I walked over to the bagger, and while I finished unloading, I couldn't stop thinking for a single minute about what I had seen. I looked everywhere for that horse, but as you can imagine, it wasn't there. Then I got into the cab of the bagger, where my other friend and co-worker was, to have some mate with him. This cab is outdoors, and that's when we saw my other co-worker come in with his tractor. Everything was normal until the unexpected occurred. We both saw how the tractor slammed on the brakes right before reaching the bagging machine, exactly in the same spot where I had stopped. And not only that, Joaquin, who was driving it, got out and ran to the back as if desperately looking for something. Then he came back, got into the cab again and continued. The question is, what happened that made him stop like that? What had he seen? We just looked at each other. We laughed because we didn't understand what had happened, and after a little while the tractor started up. He came closer and unloaded. We didn't have to make any more trips. The manager gave the order to end the night there and for us to go rest, so the workday was over, but in a rather strange way. The cabins where we slept were about a kilometer away, more or less. So during this walk I asked my coworker Joaquin what had happened. Why did he stop like that? Because at no point did he explain why he did it. I realized that he nervously dodged the question by completely changing the subject. He said he was tired and didn't want to do anything but sleep. I knew deep down that he had seen something, even though he didn't want to discuss it, but I was curious to know what it was, if it was the same thing I saw or perhaps something else. The thing is, the next day something happened that somehow confirmed that everything we had seen and what had happened was real. Even though nothing has a rational explanation, of course.
We had the habit of getting up together at the same time. In this case, we had already finished the lot, so we had to get up at 7 to pack up all the equipment and go to the next job, to the next field. Normally, we would wake up laughing and joking around. We would sit down to have breakfast, talk for a while, and then we would leave, but that day, that morning was very different. We got up and there was an incredible silence, the only one you could hear talking. The person in charge of the other room, the machinist and the bagman, who were the first to go out, and they were talking among themselves. But what caught my attention is that out of all of us, the car drivers, only one said a single word. Well, I got off, changed, went, and sat down. The cook wasn't there, there was no breakfast prepared, nothing, which made the person in charge very angry. He searched for him but couldn't find him. So, well, we decided that each of us would prepare our own breakfast. We made the food, got the cups, everything else, and sat down. The silence also made me uncomfortable.
So the person in charge, in the middle of this tense atmosphere, asked in general if someone had died or if we were mute, because I repeat, it was quite unusual for all of us to be silent. Seeing no response, I decided to speak up. I had to tell it to find out if anyone else saw the same thing or if in fact it was a hallucination.
Last night, while half asleep and hallucinating, I thought I saw a horse. One of the cart drivers looked at me, opened his eyes wide and said, "Did you see it too?" He looked at me with fear, with an incredibly scared face that even today, I still have it stuck in my head. "What thing?" I said, feigning ignorance. "I swear to you," he said, tears in his eyes. "I swear. I hit a horse, I ran over it." Remember when I said the cart and tractor can crush anything? He says, "I swear I hit a horse, I ran over it." That's why I stopped. When I got out running, there was nothing under the tractor, he tells me. Nothing was there.
Daniel also spoke there, a cart driver. He mentioned that for a long stretch, a white horse with white spots was galloping alongside the machine for several minutes, and then he didn't see it anymore. However, a tractor driver claimed he didn't see any horses in that area of the ranch. But what did catch his attention was that during that same early morning he had heard the galloping of one. Beyond the sound of the tractor, which is quite loud, it was as if the sound was inside his head. But he never managed to see it and didn't think much of it. And maybe you're wondering what was the manager's reaction. He listened to all of this and just laughed. He didn't take any of the comments seriously and asked us, please, to stay focused on our work and stop hallucinating and seeing ghost animals. And let's see calmly, it could be a hallucination from lack of sleep. Is that possible? But it sounds strange that several people would hallucinate the same thing on the same night without talking to each other. To me, it doesn't make much sense, and
That was it. We didn't discuss it further. We were already preparing to leave and had packed our clothes and everything. Suddenly the cook appeared, approached us, climbed up to the cabin and stared at us. The manager got up extremely angry and said, "What are you doing, you little shit? You were hiding." Excuse my language, but that's what he said. I remember it clearly. Where were you hiding? Why were you coming at this hour? "We must have breakfast." The man noticed him, said he's quitting and leaving today, just like that. We never knew why. The guy said, "I'm leaving," and he left. Not long after, just a few days later, we left that place. We went to a farm that was deeper into Las Petacas, further inside Las Petacas, that's the one. We took the same route that was under construction, requiring detours due to roadwork. Since the cook quit, the manager told me, "Hey Matias, you're going to cook. I'm making you the cook. Are you responsible for the truck, trailer, and everything?" "Alright," I said, "it's no problem until you find someone." As the cook, the manager always brought me along wherever they went. And at one point, around 10 at night, I was cooking, and Matias says to me, "We have to make a quick trip to the field where we were working because I have to go collect payment." "Alright," I said, "let's go. Let's make it quick because the food will be ready soon." So we got in the truck and left. He was driving. When we entered the ranch, we didn't even go 3 meters before something crossed in front of the truck. I remember clearly, it was the horse, it was that horse. My supervisor slammed on the brakes and there was a crash, an explosion you can't even imagine, the noise it made. And then the truck stopped and everything went silent.
my supervisor jumped out and ran to the back because this horse that we supposedly hit slammed into the truck really hard and then went to the back. The strange thing was that nothing on the truck was broken. When you hit an animal of this size, it doesn't just break the front end and the windshield, it's almost certain that it gets destroyed. But in this case, everything was intact. A few seconds went by. The manager got back in and just stared at me without saying a word, with a look of fear on his face that I'll never forget. I asked him what happened and he told me there was nothing. There was no horse, there was no animal, there was no blood, nothing was broken, the front of the vehicle was perfectly fine. We both got out, checked everything with a flashlight and didn't find anything, so we got back in and kept going. I went to the gringo's house, the ranch owner. When we arrived, he was outside, waiting for us because he had the payment for my manager, and as soon as he saw us, he asked Martin, the manager, if something had happened to him, as it was obvious he was acting quite strange. At first, he didn't want to tell him, but since he insisted, he told him everything in detail and also told him what we had experienced. And this man very calmly, which caught our attention at first, asked us to stay calm. That this horse had been seen for many years and it was almost normal to come across it from time to time. It scared you because it would suddenly appear, but it didn't do anything else. Maybe it just wanted to get attention.
What are you telling me? Leo? Kind of annoyed. I don't know why I got angry, Leo. What do you mean, brother? We nearly collided with a horse. Leo told me to handle it and drove off at high speed. We feared for our lives. "No," he says, "that horse belonged to my dad. My old man brought it here. He said he found it lost on the road. He gave it water, food, and the next night, after a whole day had passed, it disappeared as if nothing happened and it stayed here." That was one of the things that happened to me while working in the chopping, and to this day, I still haven't forgotten them. They're one of those things I just can't get out of my head. Another thing I forgot to mention, which is worth highlighting, is that the gringo told us before we left, "Hey Martin, your cook slept here. Last night he told me there was a horse walking around the cabin and it wouldn't leave him alone." He claims that while inside the cabin he saw it through the windows, but when he went outside, nothing was there. He came here to the house really scared, begging me to please let him in. And while we were talking, I tried to calm him down, telling him it was normal. That's what Gringo told us. It was normal to see a horse wandering around, but he didn't want to go out at all, so I invited him to sleep over. And the next day, as soon as he got up, well, he said, "Bye, thanks," and left.
Something also happened to me in La Petronila, a place owned by a prominent military officer. It was 850 hectares of land, but at first it covered more than 4,500 hectares, something really huge. And from what I learned, these lands have a very interesting and cruel history. Since in the past, during the clashes between gauchos and soldiers, many people ended up being killed. And it was even known that in a certain place many people had been buried in a mass grave. Many years ago, a group of forensic anthropologists studied the area and found, if I remember correctly, 12 to 13 bodies from that time, and all of them had been killed. Unfortunately, the owner of this piece of land did not allow the excavations to continue, and they were cancelled, so it is understood that there are many more bodies buried there. Although these are merely comments and stories passed around verbally, something else will leave you astonished, and you start to understand why the area itself is filled with negative energy. The owner of this ranch died at a very old age, and his children became the heirs. There were 3 of them, but one of them made the terrible decision to kill his 2 brothers to keep everything for himself. The location of their burial was never discovered. The investigation was minimal, and they were reported as missing persons. I insist that everything I'm telling you are stories known only by a few people. Maybe there are some details that aren't so clear, but at least I'm telling you what I know. And you'll also find out what happened to me firsthand, in these very lands that are stained with blood. It turns out that this last heir lost almost everything years later because of gambling, and not only that, a group of people who suspected what he had done forced him to confess to the crime and then ended up lynching him. Having said that, I want to tell you that I worked for a while in these same fields, I walked these lands, and I can confirm that very strange things happen here. I imagine it's all connected to these same stories I told you about, and maybe some others that aren't known. During one of my shifts, I experienced something chilling. And interestingly, near this house where those murders happened, and where they also found the bodies buried.
The first day I went to plant, which was the first time I had planted in that lot, I had to do the edges, and while doing the edges, I passed by the side of the house. The tractor completely stopped on me. All the lights and the dashboard turned off. Everything stopped completely. I was left confused, not knowing what was happening or going on. We checked the tractor and did everything before starting work, but it's still not working. I'm taking out my phone to call the manager. It was around 7 in the evening, still somewhat daylight. I looked and didn't have any signal. Something very strange, because Petronila, if you look it up on Google Maps, is very close to the highway, very close to Las Piura. To the town, that's where this farm is located. And so I got off the tractor. I think I walked about 50 meters, maybe 30, walking like this around the tractor. Then, from the tractor backwards, moving away from the house. In the middle of the field, I get a signal. I call the manager and ask what to do since the tractor stopped. He says it's normal for that to happen and to wait a bit before restarting it. And when he told me that, I said, okay. I went back to the tractor, walked over, got in, turned the key, and everything lit up. I tried to start it, and it started, so I went back out. I got going again. The headlands are between 3 or 4 rounds when planting, depending on the instructions given. And when I passed in front of the house again, exactly the same thing happened to me. Following the manager's instructions without much thought, I turned off the ignition, waited briefly, and then restarted the car successfully. And just like that, the whole week, from Saturday to Thursday. It happened to me. It happened every day. Every time I passed in front of the house, the tractor would stop. Until I started staying away from the house, then everything started to feel more normal. Well, one Friday, I remember it clearly. At 2 in the morning, I was planting, and my coworker was there with another tractor. He was always there for me whenever I ran out of seed or urea to refill the planter. I saw him turn on the lights and come over, but he was coming at a high speed. The tractor was a Massey Ferguson that, when revved up, could reach up to 50-55 kilometers per hour. He was coming at a high speed, and I looked at him and thought, what's wrong with this guy? Why is he coming so fast? I had a radio. I was listening to the radio, and I stopped because he cut in front of me. He cut in to make me stop, and I stopped just like that, suddenly. I disabled the machine to stop it from releasing the seed, and he ran out. And he gets in and sits next to me. He didn't say anything to me.
I stared at him and even laughed, not understanding why he had entered the cab in that manner. And when I asked him what he was doing, he begged me to please leave with the manager because he didn't want anything more to do with working there. I asked him over and over again because I still couldn't understand why he was saying this. He was very scared, it was obvious, and I can confirm this for you. and he told me that we should leave because something had happened that he just didn't want to tell me about because I wouldn't believe it. But I insisted, and he told me. He told me that while he was driving the tractor, his radio started to get overloaded to an unbearable point because of the noise and the high volume. And when he turns it off, he looks to his right side. The cabins of these tractors are all made of glass, and he sees a being standing just a few meters away, completely motionless and staring at him intently. According to him, it had a horrible appearance, and not only that, it almost reached the roof of the tractor, so it was easily about 2 meters tall or more. He was so scared that I didn't contradict him, although honestly, I really wanted to. I was skeptical and told him to stay, suggesting we finish up and that he could sleep if he wanted to. For me, it was simply fatigue, so we carried on. I had to finish my round, and it was at that moment when I got very close to where my partner had just seen this being, when something happened, and this time I was a witness.
It still gives me goosebumps to this day, just remembering it, just imagining it. It was a flash, I swear, just a flash. The corner lit up, it lit up completely. And my partner hugged me, he started hugging me, he started shaking me. Matias, 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 come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. And that's when I saw it. It was something that was about 2 meters tall. It was shining, it was white, it had no face, I swear to you. It was a featureless thing, devoid of eyes, nose, or mouth. It had a human shape, its arms were a bit longer than normal, and it was completely white and shining. And I was like paralyzed. I got really scared, and at one point I reacted. I hit the gas, accelerating the tractor to max speed. I raised the seeder and shot across the field, mowing down everything I had planted. I went straight ahead, and there we had the trailer where we usually stayed to sleep. At times we would just lie down for a bit with the supervisors present right beside us. And we both got out. My coworker got out first running and went into the trailer, and then I got out. I didn't know what to say. The supervisor came over, put his hand on my shoulder, and asked, "Matias, what happened?" Even though I thought he was going to yell at me. I said, "No, if I tell you, you won't believe me. I swear." What he answered left me stunned. "You saw it," he says to me, "right? You saw it. You saw that light?" He instructs me to grab it, turn off the tractor, leave the light on, and go inside the house immediately before it gets closer, even though I said no, and the bystanders didn't see it.
We all ended up locked inside the cabin. We locked all the windows and doors, and we spent the rest of the early morning there. We slept very little, as you can imagine, but it was far from over. Mateo, my partner, woke up the next morning and his arms, abdomen, and part of his legs were completely bruised. Of course, I'm more than sure that the day before he wasn't like that. He wasn't injured, he wasn't hurt, and he hadn't felt anything at all. He had never hit himself. And we understood that for some reason that entity had targeted him, maybe because he was the most scared. Mateo even ended up hospitalized and only returned about 10 days later. And a very important detail is that the story I told you at the beginning about the buried bodies, the murders and so on, I only found out about weeks after these events. So don't think that we were influenced by anything. We worked calmly, like always and in every crop, but this one, without a doubt, was very different.
The one who was really affected by all this was the young man, that Mateo. He went back to work, but he didn't return to planning. He went back to the chopping team. We worked together there in the sector, and he was a different person. He wasn't the same. He used to be a guy who talked a lot, laughed. No, he was different. He'd show up without saying hi or talking. If he went to the tractor, he'd spend the entire day on it without getting off at all. And that's how it was for about a month, and after about a month, he quit.
Without a doubt, those were incredible experiences, and they add to the many others we've already shared on the channel that happened in Argentine fields. Thanks for sticking with me until the end, friends. See you soon, sending a big hug to everyone. Bye.